Hello everybody, welcome to CSS3 part 3 video. Today we'll be talking about two of the most confusing topics in CSS, especially if you are brand new to learning web development and CSS. So these two topics are, first one is display property and the second one would be a positioning property. So we will tackle display property first and then we will handle position separately. So what is display properties? The definition and usage. The display property specifies the display behavior, the type of rendering box of an element in HTML. The default display property value is taken from HTML specification or from the browser user default style sheet. If you're wondering what is this website is W3 Schools. It's a fantastic website if you are trying to learn web development on your own time. So display property is a property that you will always be using, especially to change the behavior, the display behavior, because each HTML element has a display behavior on its own by default that's given by the browser. We will talk about this for display property values specifically. You can see there's none, inline block, and inline block. There are others that are not really used that much, but you can go ahead and check them out on your own time. And before I start working on display, I just want to say that this video is a continuation of a series that I'm doing. So if you haven't checked out my first part 1 and part 2, those two links are going to be given below in the description. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start our display property. So let me explain what I have in the HTML. I am using CodePen for this. If you haven't checked out CodePen, I think I explained CodePen in the CSS part 2, so you can check that out, or you can just go search codepen.io and create your own account and then save your work and just create your prototype. Okay, so in the HTML, what I actually have here is the first one is a div. You can see I have a div, and I did give a class div1 just to give a background. So I gave the body a background of light gray, and I have div1, and then after the div I do have a span, and then I have an image and another span, and then lastly I have another div. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the default display value that a div has. So div has a display value of block by default. So this is the div1. I am grabbing the first div. You can see background color is white. So it basically means by default it has a display of block. And you see that nothing changes because that's the default value. What block does, it block takes the maximum space that is available in the document. So you see that content is div1 and it ends right here, but the background white is actually taking the whole space. So a block element will take the maximum space, and it also going to take on its own line. And for the span, has the display by default is inline. So what does inline is exactly the opposite of block, meaning the span inline will take the minimum space that it requires for its content. And as you can see, the span has a background of light blue, and it is just the space that is taken, the minimum space that it requires to just show the span writing here. And then another thing is that it's not, because it's taking minimum space, it does not form its own line. So you can put other elements beside inline block. Inline elements. So we have a span that has an inline display, and then we have an image, and then we have another span, and you can see that all these three elements are side by side. And that's what inline does, because it takes minimum space. So just the opposite of a block element. Image has by default display of inline block. So what inline block does is it behaves just as inline element, but with inline block you can actually specify width and height, and you can see that on the image I've specified a width of 100 pixel and a height 100 pixel, and because it displays inline block I can specify those width and height for it. I can also change this one for 200 pixel for width and 200 pixel for height. You can see that the image now is bigger than it used to be. But for the span, I cannot, with this display inline, I cannot change the width and height. I cannot change its dimension. So you see that span display inline, I specified width and height, but nothing changes because this is not allowed. It cannot change its dimension when the display is inline. So if you do have to specify a certain width and height, you should consider display of inline block. Okay, so we have learned so far, we have a display block that takes the maximum space and form its own line, and then we have a display inline that takes minimum space, and you can have multiple elements side by side. And we also learn about inline block that you can specify width and a height, and it behaves just like an inline element. Another display, and we're gonna grab this div 2, and this display is you can see that this display is a block because it's a div, but I can change that display and I can just say none, and you see what none does is basically take that element completely out of the document as if it never existed. So that's what display none does. So if you ever want to have an element that you don't want to show, at least when the page loads, you can set that display to none. And then maybe with some JavaScript you can bring that element back with by setting its display to block or inline or whatever you want. So that's so you don't, if a div already has by default is a display block, so I don't really have to specify this one. It's already have a display block, but if I have to change that display, I have to specify that. So let's say div 1, I don't want it to be a block, I want the display to be inline, so I can just do this. I can just say inline, and you can see that now this div 1 has an inline and it's taking the minimum space and it is all in one line. So that's pretty much it for display, and we'll be using this display property heavily when we are going to be creating our first layout of the page, web page, for an example. Now let's go ahead and practice and learn about positioning. Okay, so let's talk about the position property. The position property specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. There are 5 different position values. We have static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. Okay, so let's talk about the HTML structure here. So I have a container box, container div, and within this div I have 3 children div, and I have given it a class of box1, box2, box3 just for a coloring purpose. So it has a box1, box2, and box3. So I have 3 divs within a container div. Okay, if I look for the CSS right here, it's just simple background color. So I gave a color of white. Actually, it needs to be a light gray for the body, and then the container has light blue. In fact, I can't really see container right here, so let's just go back to white. And then container has a light blue color. I gave a padding just for visual effect, so it's not important. There's nothing going on in terms of positioning right here. But I do have this box 1, box 2, and box 3. So the first thing what I can do here is let's take a look. The default position that has been assigned to the container div. So if I right click inspect on here, and if I go ahead and just click on this container div and go to compute it, and if I search position And I can see here the position here is given it's static. Thus, what static position is just how your HTML documents work. It's it's a very default position, which is a static position. Okay, so you don't have to specify anything. It just every element in your HTML will have a static position. So if you go look for position static, HTML elements are position static by default. Static positioned elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, and right properties. And we're going to learn about top, bottom, left, and right properties for the next position value, which is going to be relative. So let's specify right now everything is position static, right? So let's go ahead and change the position of this box 1 to relative and see what happens. So if I do position relative here, and you can see nothing changes because relative works exactly like static, but position relative gives us 4 options to change its position. So it gives us top, bottom, left, and right. So if I see left and if I see 10 pixel, let's see what happens. You can see that now the box 1 is moved 10 pixel to the right because I just made left 10 pixels. So 10 pixels are going to appear right here. So position relative is actually relative to its static position. It's from its default position, I can change that element position with top, left, and bottom, and right, of course. So I can also here, in fact, instead of left, I can just do right, which is going to be right 10 pixel, and that's actually going to get out of the container flow. I can also do top. And you can see that position top 10 pixel is kind of making this element overflow on the box 2, which not sometimes, which we don't really want on our document when we're styling it. So most of the time we will not be using position relative with top, bottom, and left, right, but position relative has its purpose, and we will show you in a second what's the purpose is. Okay, so there you go. So position relative is the second one. So first one is static, second one is relative, where you can use top, left, right, top, and bottom. And the third one we're going to talk about is called absolute. What position absolute does, and I can just show you here. Okay, so position absolute, you can see the position absolute box 1 is completely, what it does is it's completely takes that element out of the document flow. And you can see as if this box 1 is completely out of flow, it basically makes so as if this box 1 doesn't even exist. So if I just comment out, and you can see that all the box 2 and box 3 has a position static, and it behaving as if that box 1 doesn't even exist on the page. And that's what position absolute does, is that it just takes that element out of the flow, out of the document flow completely. So that's what position absolute does. And it also position absolute also takes top, left, and right, and bottom position. So if I do, let's say, top 0, let's say, and you can see that box 1 has a top 0. That means I don't want any space on the top of this box 1. And this box 1, first of all, by positioning absolute, it takes out of the entire flow of this document, and then it is going straight up because we specify top should be 0, so it's at the very, very top. But if we want to use this box 1 to the top, but within this container div, then what we have to do is we have to go to the container, and we have to specify position relative to the container. There we go. Now, if the div, the container within the element is that has the position absolute, if the container we have specifies position relative, then it is going to be inside that box, inside that container. Now it is going to, because position absolute takes the element out of the flow and it looks for the next relative, next position relative. It's going to look for the container that it's in and see if that position is specified relative. If that is, then it's going to be positioning relative to that container. But if it's not, then it's going to go to the next one, which is the whole HTML body. And that's why the position absolute and position relative actually really works great with regards to each other. So if you want to position something absolutely, then within a box, within a container, then just have a position relative to the container, and then you can change the position absolute on the box one. And I can actually do a lot of stuff. I can actually do here, let's say right is also 0 if I do this, and you can see that now the box one is on the top right, because top 0 and right is 0, and because it is completely out of the flow, I can actually position it wherever I want. Okay, so that's what absolute does. Okay, all right, so I'm going to get rid of this right now. Go back to the main layout. The next one is going to be position fixed. So let's stick with the box one and let's do position fixed here. Now you can see position fixed behaves exactly like position absolute. But position fixed has an attribute or characteristic that is absolutely fixed. So if we change that body height to 200 view height, that's basically the viewport. I'm just making it bigger so I have a scroll bar, and you can see that box one is fixed on that position. It, even if I scroll, it's always there. It is not moving like the whole container is, and that's what position fixed is. Position fixed also does let's see, also accept the top right and bottom left property values, just like absolute does, but the fixed is always going to be fixed. Okay, all right, so the next up is called a position sticky, and the position sticky is it has to work. So position sticky, it has to have a relative in order to work. And what position sticky does is position sticky is kind of combination of a position relative and a position fixed. So you can see here the box one right now has a position sticky and it exactly behaves as a position relative element would. But if I scroll and then position, that box one has a top of 0 and it reaches that, you see that it's stuck there. So that's what position sticky does. Position sticky is a combination between position relative and an absolute, because position relative and fixed together, because it is going to be fixed and it's not going to move with the scroll as long as it reaches its limitation that we set for the position sticky. So that's that is it. That's the mostly gist of it. If you want to learn more, you can obviously go ahead in the W3 school and play with it. But this is what position relative absolute means. Absolute relative is just like static, but position relative also take left, right, and top. We usually use position relative in the container on the parent div, so that we can have its children's have a position absolute if we want to specify their position with the top, left, bottom, where exactly we want to position them. An absolute take element out of the flow. Position fixed is going to behave just like absolute, but it's going to be fixed in a certain position. And position sticky is a combination between relative and fixed. Hopefully, I made position and display easy to understand. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. In the next video, of course, I'm going to be talking about two of the very good technologies, which is a display flexbox and display grid system. So if you want to get notified, please consider subscribing, and if you like this video, please share and give it a like. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.